Story number 1. When I was in high school, our group of mates was quite large, about 10 of us, but it was pretty rare for everyone to actually make a plan together. That day was a dark, cloudy and stifling school day. Me, my mate Jared, Michelle and Christina, the 4 of us were sitting together on the very back bench of history class. We had a supplementary teacher that day instead of our regular teacher, so there was absolutely no pressure to study. All of us were just chatting amongst ourselves. Our high school building was constructed in the 1930s, a massive and old piece of architecture, and at the very edge of that huge school oval, inside a dense forest, a dilapidated 2-story building lay abandoned. Word of mouth had it that back in the 1940s, it used to be used as a daycare or a preschool. The school authorities had never demolished it. Having been abandoned for years and years, the entire building was completely covered in vines, and even looking at it during the day would make your skin crawl. The 4 of us decided that since today was Friday, we would sneak inside that dilapidated building at midnight for a bit of an adventure. If there were too many people, there'd be a fear of catching the security guard's eye, so we didn't tell the rest of our mates anything. After night fell, we avoided the main gate and took a secret dark path through the forest to enter the school grounds. The surroundings were pitch black, with only the narrow beam of our torches showing the way through the fog. When we reached the front of that dilapidated building, we saw the entire place was surrounded by a high barbed wire fence. Jared and I helped the 2 girls over the fence first, and then we carefully jumped over to the other side ourselves. There were many old broken windows all along the walls of the building. We walked around the walls on all sides, searching for a way to get in. The main door was locked tight with a massive iron padlock. In the end, Jared and I broke a small back window to make a way inside. I lifted Michelle and Christina onto the window ledge first and lowered them inside. Then Jared crawled his way in. Being the tallest and broadest bloke in the group, I had a bit of a hard time getting through, and in that frantic rush, my palm got slightly cut on a piece of broken window glass. If you're still listening, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. The next part of the story holds an even deeper mystery. After getting inside, I pressed down on the wounded spot with one hand and looked all around the dark, damp room. A strong, musty smell of dust hit me nose. The place looked exactly like an ancient classroom, where small wooden tables and chairs were lying upturned. But the strange thing was, there was absolutely no one else in the room except me. The ones who had entered right before me seemed to have vanished into thin air in a single second. Getting a bit rattled, I called out Jared's name in a low voice, but I received no reply. I stepped out of that room into a narrow, dilapidated hallway. On both sides of the hallway, the open doors of many classrooms were gaping wide like the mouths of dark caves. I couldn't understand why my mates had left me behind and gone ahead so quickly. I called out their names again, but only the sound of my own voice echoed through the entire building. Peeking into rooms one by one, I came to a halt in front of a classroom right in the middle of the hallway. At the very far corner, in the dim light coming through the window, a figure stood perfectly still, staring out into the forest. Judging by the silhouette, I thought it was Jared. Letting out a sigh of relief, I said, "Far out, mate. What are you doing here? And why did you leave me alone and run off?" The figure turned around and looked at me, but because of the darkness, his face and eyes couldn't be seen clearly. He didn't say a single word. Right then, I heard someone walking with heavy steps over old school supplies and paper scattered at the very far end of the hallway. Out of curiosity, I moved towards the last classroom on the absolute left, and the moment I stepped into the doorway, someone suddenly leaped out from the darkness and let out a massive scream right in my face. Out of pure fright, my heart rate felt like it stopped for a second. I looked closer, and it was Jared. Then Christina and Michelle popped out behind me and burst out laughing. They let me know that just a few minutes before entering, they'd set up this hiding plan just to scare the absolute daylights out of me. Out of sheer relief, I gave Jared a light shove, but the thumping inside my chest still hadn't stopped. I whispered to him, If you lot are right here, then who on earth is standing in that middle room? I literally just saw Jared looking exactly like him in there." Hearing my words, the laughter vanished completely from the girls' faces. The four of us went back together to that middle classroom, but there was no one there anymore. The entire room was completely empty. Suddenly, Christina took a step back in sheer terror, and a groaning sound escaped from her mouth. We followed the direction of her gaze and looked towards the gap in the door. Right in the narrow gap in the middle of the wooden door, 1/4 of a human face was pressed tightly against the wood. Someone was watching us with absolute perfection from the other side of the door. The pupils of those open eyes were completely still and filled with absolute madness. Without wasting a single second, Jared screamed out, "Run from here!" The four of us ran like blind men through the corridor, racing towards that broken window. I was at the very back, and it felt like at any absolute moment someone was going to stretch out a cold hand from behind and grab my leg. We somehow squeezed through the window to the outside, scrambled over the fence, and ran straight to Christina's house. After calming down later, we thought about it. All the doors and windows of the building were locked, and we were the only ones who'd broken a window. Then how was that bloke already inside beforehand? Was he some fugitive on the run, or a psychopath who stakes out that place? We never went back towards those woods again, but that eye peeking through the gap in the door still haunts me to this day.
Story 2. My name's Ryan. Me and a few of my mates made a plan over the weekend to go and explore that old high school daycare building. There was a bloke named Jason among us who always thought of himself as incredibly brave. The time was almost 11:30 p.m. We came and stood right in front of that dilapidated building covered in vines inside the woods. The roof of the entire building had partially collapsed, and the plaster on the walls was peeling off in chunks. Jason broke the lock on the door using an iron rod, and we entered inside one by one. After stepping inside, it felt to us like we had time-travelled right back to the 1940s. Some old faded drawings made by children were still hanging on the walls. Jason and the rest of the boys said they were going to check out the office rooms on the top floor, while I began looking around the downstairs corridor. When I walked inside a large classroom, I saw a small child's red shoe lying on the floor under the beam of my torch. The shoe looked completely brand new, without a single speck of dust gathered on it. In this dilapidated and abandoned place, where on earth would such a new shoe come from? A seed of suspicion planted itself inside my mind. Right then, the sounds of Jason and the rest of my mates talking loudly upstairs drifted down. They were probably messing around in the rooms upstairs. I stepped out of the room and walked towards the stairs. Suddenly, it felt to me like someone was standing in the dark corner at the absolute end of the corridor. Flashing my torchlight over there, I saw a man wearing an old overcoat standing with his face turned directly towards the wall. I figured Jason was probably wearing a jacket, standing there just to scare me. Laughing, I said, "Jason, you can't scare me with this cheap trick, mate. Get downstairs." If you're still listening, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. The next part of the story holds an even deeper mystery. But the man didn't make a single movement. Right at that exact millisecond, the sounds of Jason and the rest of my mates talking loudly upstairs drifted down. They were walking down the stairs from the top floor. My entire body turned as cold as ice in a single second. If all of my mates are on the stairs upstairs, then whose tall silhouette is this, standing right in front of me with his face to the wall? Trembling, I lowered the beam of my torch down towards the man's feet. I saw that he had no shoes on his feet, and the soles of his feet were turned completely backwards. I completely lost the strength to even let out a scream. The man very slowly began to turn his neck around to me. Without standing there for even another fraction of a second, I spun around and bolted towards the stairs. When Jason and the rest of my mates saw me panting like this, they figured I'd just seen a ghost. I grabbed them by the hands, pulling them along as I said, "Let's get out of here. There's someone else inside this building." As we were sprinting towards the main door, a massive, harsh laughing sound echoed through the entire building from the corridor behind us. That wasn't a normal human laugh. It was the demonic scream of a twisted mind. We burst out through the main door to the outside and ran straight to the school's main gate. The next day, we informed the school principal about the entire incident. When the police conducted a search inside that abandoned daycare building, they recovered a massive amount of stolen goods and the ID card of a missing person from a hidden closet on the top floor. That man wasn't actually anything supernatural. He was a ruthless fugitive killer who'd set up camp inside that abandoned school to evade the police, and he'd been keeping an eye on our every single move. Friends, how did you like these two bone-chilling psychological horror stories from the abandoned high school? When dangerous criminals living in society set up their hideouts behind the cover of old and isolated buildings, doesn't that terror shudder you? Is there any such mysterious or abandoned place around your school or college where everyone is terrified to go? You must let us know your experiences and opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to share the video with your mates if you liked it. Thank you all so much for watching until the very end. Inshallah, we will see you again in the next mystery. Stay with us by subscribing.